The throne room was silent, except for her breath. Years had passed since the day her child vanished, but the ache never left. The chamber stretched endlessly around her, walls of glimmering crystal catching the pale light of Virethia's twin suns, turning the air into shards of blue and silver. Once, this hall had echoed with celebration, with the sound of a child's laughter running between the pillars. Now it was only cold, only empty. Queen Zelira sat upon the throne carved from obsidian and diamond veins, her back straight as steel, though her heart felt like ash. To her people, she was the Iron Empress, unyielding, merciless, the conqueror of 5 star systems. None of them saw the hollow place inside her. None of them knew how every victory tasted of ash, because one small voice was gone. Her daughter, her Ceres. Her long fingers traced the armrest, feeling the grooves cut by generations of rulers before her. A symbol of legacy, a legacy now in question. Without her child, there would be no bloodline, no heir. Already, whispers slid through the marble corridors like venom. Council members questioning her fitness to rule. Nobles sharpening their ambitions in the dark. Rebellion simmered beneath the jeweled surface of her empire, and still, she could not let go of the hope that somewhere, in the infinite dark between stars, her daughter lived. Her gaze drifted to the banners hanging high above. They bore the sigil of her house, a serpent of light encircling a sun. Once, Ceres had asked why the serpent was not smiling. Because power never smiles, little one, she had told her. It only survives. She remembered the way the child's silver crest had glimmered that day, the way her tiny fingers had curled around Zelira's hand. A memory tore through her like a blade. She shut her eyes and the throne room faded. She was back there, the day everything fell apart. The Peace Summit had been held in the Crystal Gardens. Humans had stood across from her delegates, their faces unreadable masks of flesh and bone. She remembered Ceres playing near the fountains, her laughter like bells. And then, silence. A scream, the sound of engines tearing the sky. By the time she reached the landing bay, all that was left was smoke and the scent of metal. No sign of her child. Only a fragment of the silver crest, broken in two. Her jaw tightened as the vision faded. She opened her eyes to the present and rose from the throne, her robe of molten sapphire spilling across the stairs. Her voice, when she spoke, was low, steady, and edged with something that could freeze suns. "Find her," she whispered, though no one else stood in the room. "Find her, or I will turn the stars themselves into graves." Rumors had reached her ears, whispers carried by merchants, spies, and thieves. They said the humans knew something, that one of their war factions had traded and stolen bloodlines, that her daughter might still breathe beneath alien skies. Zelira stepped toward the towering windows, the endless black sea of space stretching beyond. Her reflection glared back at her, tall, luminous skin glimmering faintly, sapphire eyes burning, like twin suns. She was beautiful, terrible, eternal, and yet hollow without her child. "I will find you, Ceres," she murmured. The sound trembled like a vow carved into steel. Her hands clenched, nails biting into her palms as she made the promise again, the same promise she had made every night for 20 years. Whoever returned her daughter would be rewarded beyond measure, and whoever had taken her would know a death so complete it would echo through galaxies. Outside the palace, the twin suns sank into the horizon, painting the world in crimson fire. And far away, in the shadows of another star system, a human warrior walked alone carrying something precious, something that would shatter everything. Asterisk, the guard's weapons hummed as the human approached the gates alone, unarmed and carrying something in his arms. The air outside the imperial palace was sharp with the cold winds of twilight, scattering silver dust across the obsidian stairs. 2 moons hung above like watchful eyes as the towering gates of Verethia cast their shadow over him. He walked steadily, each step echoing against the crystal-paved courtyard. His cloak was torn, streaked with soot and blood. The figure in his arms was wrapped in dark fabric, motionless, but his grip around it was fierce protective. "Stop where you stand." The lead guard's voice cut through the air. A dozen spears of energy leveled at his chest, humming with deadly intent. "Identify yourself, Offworlder." The human did not stop. He kept walking, boots crunching against the frost that had begun to settle. His face was weathered, streaked with scars and dirt, and his eyes, cold gray eyes, held something the guards had not seen before. Not fear, not arrogance. Something heavier. "I need to speak to your queen," he said. His voice was low, hoarse from distance and silence. The guards exchanged sharp looks. Humans were rare here, hated by most, hunted by some. This one had the audacity to demand an audience, unarmed, alone. The captain stepped forward, raising his glaive so close that the blade's light brushed the man's chest. "No one speaks to the queen without sanction." The guard sneered. "Especially not a human. Turn back now, or—" The man shifted his grip on the bundle and spoke a single word. A name, Zelira. The sound froze the guards where they stood. No one spoke that name aloud, not in the open, not without consequence. The queen's true name was guarded like a weapon, known only to blood and sworn oath-bearers. And yet this stranger had said it as if it belonged to him, as if he had carried it across galaxies. Before the captain could recover, the man let the cloak slip from the figure in his arms. A pale hand fell free slender, marked with faint sigils that glowed softly in the moonlight. And on her brow, half hidden beneath tangled silver hair, was a crest, the royal crest of House Zelira. Gasps rippled through the guard line. Energy. Weapons trembled in their grips. "Open the gates," the man said, voice like iron. "Tell your queen her daughter is home." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the great obsidian gates groaned as their locks disengaged, the sound deep and heavy like the shifting of a mountain dock as the doors parted. The throne hall's light spilled across the stairs like molten gold. And there, framed in the towering archway, stood the queen herself. Zelira moved forward, her sapphire eyes fixed on the human, her face a mask carved from ice. The years had not softened her. She descended the steps with a grace that bent the air, her robe of molten blue trailing like a river of stars. The human sank to one knee, lowering the figure carefully onto the polished stone. When the queen reached them, her breath hitched just once before her mask cracked. The young woman's face was pale, beautiful, her features unmistakable. The crest on her brow glimmered like starlight. "Cerise?" The name escaped Zelira's lips in a voice no one had heard in decades, whisper soft as broken glass. The human raised his head. "She's alive," he said, "because I kept her alive." The throne hall seemed to hold its breath. Behind the queen's fierce eyes, something ancient stirred, a storm of rage, relief, and questions that could shake Empire's dot. And in that moment, as the gates sealed behind them, every star in the galaxy seemed to lean closer. Asterisk for the first time. In decades, the queen's hands trembled. She knelt beside the still figure on the polished obsidian floor, her sapphire robes pooling like liquid night around her. The warmth of the throne hall faded, drowned by the icy terror that gripped her chest. She reached out, fingers brushing the young woman's cheek-soft, warm, real. Not a dream. Not a phantom her mind had conjured in countless sleepless nights. Cerise. The name left her lips again, fragile, as though it might shatter in the air. The young woman stirred. Her eyelids fluttered open, revealing eyes like molten silver. For an instant, those eyes were blank, lost in the blur of waking. Then they fixed on Zelira and widened in recognition. Mother. The single word broke something inside. The Queen. She exhaled a sound between a sob and a gasp, her control slipping for the first time in the memory of any who watched. The guards behind her looked away, unsure if they had just witnessed something sacred or forbidden. Zelira gathered Cerise into her arms, feeling the heartbeat faint but steady against her own chest. The scent of alien worlds clung to her child, mixed with blood and soot. For 20 years she had imagined this moment, had feared it would never come. Now that it had, joy burned through her like a nova, and behind it, a fire of rage that could consume suns. She lifted her gaze to the human. Asterisk. Explain, she commanded, her voice low and sharp enough to cut steel. Commander Eric Halla did not flinch. He met her eyes with the calm of a man who had walked through hell and returned carrying its ashes. I will, he said, his tone heavy with something unspoken. But not here. Not now. She needs care? Zelira's jaw tightened, but she saw the truth in his words. Cerise was alive, but barely. Her frame was too thin, her once bright skin dulled by exhaustion and hunger. Something in her aura felt fractured. And yet she lived. Take her. The Queen ordered. Her voice cracked like a whip to the guards. Prepare the healer's wing. No delay. As attendants rushed forward to carry Cerise, the Queen rose to her full height, her sapphire eyes never leaving the human. Walk with me, she said. It was not a request. They entered the long crystal corridor that stretched like a frozen river. Beyond the throne hall, light from Verithia's moons streamed through vast windows, painting the walls in silver fire. For a time, neither spoke. Only their footsteps echoed softly, a strange harmony of boots and flowing silk. You said you kept her alive, she murmured, her voice quiet but edged with storm. Tell me why. Why would a human risk so much for my child? Eric's jaw worked as though the words weighed a ton each. Because I found her when no one else did, he said. Because they would have broken her, used her, if I hadn't taken her away. Zelira's gaze flicked toward him, sharp as a blade. Who? Not your people, not your enemies. His gray eyes darkened like storm clouds. Humans, a faction that deals in blood and power. They stole her to gain leverage. When their plans collapsed, they planned to kill her. The Queen's chest burned with fury, so raw it stole her breath. Her fists clenched, nails biting into her palms. She imagined entire fleets burning, worlds turning to glass. And you? She asked, voice like ice. Why save her? What did you hope to gain? Eric stopped walking, turned to face her. For the first time, his voice softened. Nothing, he said. I didn't save her for power. I saved her because no one else would. The truth in his tone cut through her rage like a blade of light. For an instant, Zelira saw something she had not expected. A man haunted, carrying years of burden like chains across his soul. She stepped closer, studying him. His scars told stories of battles fought in shadows. His eyes held pain she almost recognized. And then, for the briefest moment, she wondered, what did this human mean to Cerise? The Queen turned away, her robe sweeping like starlight. You will answer more, she said coldly, when she wakes. As they walked toward the healer's wing, Zelira's thoughts churned. Gratitude and suspicion warred inside her. Cerise was back but changed. The Queen had her blood returned. Yet the human's words lingered, heavy and sharp. No one else would have saved her. She did not know why that sounded less like an excuse, and more like a truth she could not ignore. And behind her, Eric Hallway walked in silence, his heart carrying a secret even heavier than the girl he had brought home. Asterisk, why risk your life for her? The queen's voice was low, carrying through the healer's wing like the whisper of a blade. The chamber was vast, lined with columns of silver stone and pools of pale healing light that shimmered like liquid glass. Cerise lay on a raised platform. At the center, surrounded by medical drones humming softly as they worked to stabilize her fragile frame. Her breath came slow and steady, each rise of her chest easing the coil of terror in Zelira's heart, but only slightly. The queen stood motionless, her silhouette bathed in blue glow, her sapphire robe pooling like starlight on the polished floor. Her gaze was fixed on the human across from her, a soldier who looked far too calm for a man standing before an empire's wrath. Eric Hall leaned against one of the crystal pillars, his torn cloak removed, revealing battle-scarred armor. Beneath, his gray eyes were storm clouds, his expression carved from iron. "You didn't answer me," Zelira said again, sharper now. "Why risk your life for her? Why walk into the heart of my empire when you knew you could die before you reached the gates?" Eric's jaw flexed. For a moment, silence stretched like a drawn bowstring. Then finally he spoke. "Because I gave her my word," he said. The queen's eyes narrowed, burning like twin suns. "Your word? To whom does a human's word matter?" "To her," Eric said simply, his gaze flicking toward Cerise. His voice softened in a way Zelira didn't expect, a tone wrapped in something heavy and unspoken. "I found her when she had nothing. No one. They would have killed her, used her, twisted her into something unrecognizable. I couldn't let that happen." "You speak as if you care," the queen murmured, stepping closer, her presence like a blade pressing against his throat. "Why? Tell me the truth, human. Was it duty? Or something else?" Eric's lips tightened, his silence saying more than words ever could. The faint flicker in his eyes betrayed something, an emotion that made Zelira's pulse quicken with suspicion and a strange, unwelcome chill. Her daughter had been gone for 20 years, raised among strangers. What had she become? And what bond did she now share with this human who spoke her name like a prayer? Before Zelira could demand more, the chamber doors burst open. Figures strode in Lord Varin, High Chancellor of the Cairn, Imperial Council, his robe of crimson flowing behind him like a tide of blood. His scaled face was carved into a mask of fury. "My queen," he hissed, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. "You cannot allow this." His golden eyes speared Eric like a predator sizing its prey. "A human here in our sanctum, standing before our heir? It is an insult, an abomination." "Careful, Varin," Zelira said coldly, her voice slicing through the air. "You forget who commands this throne. I forget nothing." Varin snapped, stepping closer. "But the people remember, my queen. They remember who stole our child. They remember the blood spilled by humans. If they see this man alive, if they learn he walked freely into the palace," his voice dropped to a hiss, "it could ignite rebellion. Our world burns on whispers already." Eric stood silent, his jaw tight, watching the exchange without flinching. Zelira turned her head slightly, her sapphire eyes catching the gleam of her chancellor's. "You would have me kill the man who brought my daughter home?" "Yes." Varin's answer cracked through the chamber like a whip. "Show strength, or we drown in weakness." Zelira's gaze slid back to Eric, her mind a storm. She wanted to kill him, she'd kill him, for the safety of her throne, for the message it would send. And yet, her daughter stirred in her sleep, her lips parting as a whisper slipped into the air. "Eric." A sound froze the room. A single word, soft as breath, spoken like a secret carried through years. Varin's eyes widened in horror. The guards shifted uneasily, and Zelira felt the ground tilt beneath her feet. "You dare," she whispered, her voice like ice, her heart a wildfire. "What is she to you?" Eric's eyes met hers, steady and unyielding. For a heartbeat, the truth hovered there, thick and dangerous. Then he spoke, his voice low, but carrying the weight of galaxies. "She's not just your daughter anymore." The chamber erupted in shouts, weapons raised, guards surging forward, but Zalira lifted a hand and the room froze. Her chest heaved with a storm she could not name rage, fear, something sharper than either. Her daughter lived, but everything had changed, and in that silence, Eric's words lingered like a blade against her throat. Asterisk. The palace shook as explosions ripped through the outer halls, sending shards of crystal and smoke cascading like falling stars. The healer's wing, moments ago silent and tense, erupted in alarms as the floor trembled beneath their feet. Energy lights flickered, plunging the chamber into flashes of blue and crimson. "Assassins," Varen spat, his voice raw with fear and fury. He turned to the queen, his golden eyes wide. "They've breached the inner gates." Zalira didn't answer. She was already moving. Her sapphire robe flared as she strode to her daughter, who lay pale and motionless beneath the hovering. Drones. For one fleeting heartbeat, the queen's fingers brushed Cerese's cheek before her fury ignited like a storm. "Seal the wing," she commanded, her voice reverberating like a thunderclap. Guards scrambled, their weapons humming to life. There, boots striking sparks against the crystal floor. But before the doors could close, they blew inward with a force that shook the chamber to its foundations. The explosion hurled guards through the air like broken dolls, their bodies crashing against pillars as smoke swallowed the room. From the haze emerged shapes tall, armored, their faces hidden behind masks of onyx. Blades of molten light hissed. In their hands, "Kill the girl?" the lead assassin snarled in a guttural tongue. "Leave no heir." "Over my dead body," Eric growled. He moved before thought, before breath. His hand flashed to his belt, pulling the pistol he'd kept, hidden beneath his ragged cloak. It roared once, twice, the sound deafening in the echoing hall. 2 assassins fell, smoke curling from the wounds that burned through their armor. "Protect the queen." Veron shrieked as chaos erupted. Guards clashed with assassins in a storm of steel and fire. The air reeked of ozone and blood. Eric dove. Across the polished floor, sliding beneath a swinging blade, and came up near Cerese's side. Her eyes fluttered open, silver irises wide with confusion and terror. "Eric?" Her voice was a whisper, a fragile thread in the storm. "I've got you," he rasped, scooping her into his arms. He could feel the trembling weakness in her body, the weight of years stolen from her got behind him. The assassins surged forward like a tide. One lunged, blade descending in a deadly arc, only to shatter against a wall of force. Queen Zalira stood at the center of the room, her hands outstretched, her eyes burning like twin stars gone supernova. Power radiated from her in a shockwave that rippled through the air, hurling enemies backward. The ground cracked beneath her feet, and the light of her fury bathed the chamber in searing blue fire. "You dare," she thundered, her voice splitting the air, "to defile my halls, to spill blood on Verethia, to touch what is mine." Her power lashed out, striking assassins like spears of living flame. Their screams tore the silence as they disintegrated into ash, their weapons clattering uselessly to the floor. Those who survived fell to their knees, their armor cracking, under the weight of her wrath. And still they came. From the shattered doorway poured more, a dozen shadows weaving through smoke and fire. "I can fight," she whispered, but her arms were too weak, her strength burned away by years of captivity. "Not today," he said, slamming the glaive through another attacker. From the center of the storm, Zalira moved like a goddess of war, her hands weaving arcs of pure energy. Each gesture shattered bones, melted steel, burned through flesh. But with every surge of power, Eric saw something, a flicker of strain in her eyes, a tremor in her breath. She was burning too much, too fast. A blade slipped past the chaos, aimed for Cerise's back. Eric saw it in a flash and threw himself. Between her and death, the strike drove through his armor, searing into flesh. Pain exploded like white fire, but he held her tighter, shielding her with his body. "Eric!" Her cry was a dagger in his soul. He staggered, but didn't fall. With his last ounce of strength, he wrenched the assassin's weapon free, drove the glaive upward, and sent the killer crashing in two lifeless pieces to the floor. Blood poured down his side, warm and relentless, his vision blurred. And still, he stood, Cerise safe in his arms, his body a wall of flesh and bone against the storm. When the last assassin fell, silence crushed the chamber. The floor was slick with blood, littered with shattered armor and smoking corpses. Guards stumbled to their feet, their faces pale. Queen Zelira lowered her hands. The fury in her eyes dimmed to a smolder, but her breath came hard, ragged. Her gaze found Eric scarred, broken, his lifeblood spilling across the crystal tiles. He looked at her through the haze of pain, his gray eyes steady even as his knees buckled. His lips moved, shaping words that barely carried to her ears. "Tell her the truth," he whispered, his voice fading like a dying ember. "About you and me." Then he collapsed, his body hitting the floor with a sound that silenced every breath in the room. Zelira stared down at him, her heart pounding like war drums. The human who had defied death, who had saved her child at the cost of his own life. What truth did he mean? And why, for the first time in centuries, did fear crawl cold around her soul? Asterisk. Tell her the truth, Eric's voice whispered across the chamber, breaking apart like smoke in the wind. Then silence. The human's body lay, crumpled on the polished crystal floor, a pool of blood spreading like a shadow beneath him. Cerise clutched his hand, her silver eyes wide and wet, her voice shaking as she cried out his name. "Eric! No, stay with me!" He didn't move. His breath came shallow, each rise of his chest fainter than the last. The med drones swarmed him, their scanners pulsing amber light, but even their clinical efficiency could not mask the truth. Eric Hale was dying. Queen Zelira stood frozen at the edge of the chaos. The smoke of battle still clung to her robes, the echo of her unleashed fury humming in her veins. She should have felt triumph. They had survived the attack. The assassins lay dead. But there was no triumph. Only a storm clawing through her heart as she stared at the man bleeding out on her floor. Not his last words spiraled in her mind, each one a blade. Tell her the truth. About you and me. The truth. Gods help her. Cerise turned her face up, tears streaking pale skin, dulled by years of captivity. "Mother," she whispered, her voice cracking like shattered glass. "What truth? What is he talking about?" Zelira's lips parted, but no sound came. For a moment, the great queen of Verithia the Conqueror, the unbreakable, felt small. Her hands trembled as if the weight of 2 decades pressed down upon her shoulders. She looked at Cerise, her daughter, her blood, and knew there could be no more lies. "Close the doors," Zelira said, her voice low, heavy with finality. Guards obeyed in silence, sealing the chamber. The vast hall became an island of shadows, lit only by the soft glow of healing lights. The queen crossed the floor slowly, each step a battle with herself. She stopped beside her daughter, her sapphire eyes meeting silver. And then, in a voice, stripped of its crown and iron, she spoke. "You were dying." Zelira whispered. Cerise blinked, confusion furrowing her brow. "Dying? When they stole you?" the queen continued, her voice trembling though she fought to steady it. They injured you beyond our healing. Their blades carried toxins, old poisons that devour the Varethian bloodline. Our science could not purge it. Her hands curled into fists, nails biting her palms, as the memory surged back, the desperate reports, the endless failures, the horror of helplessness. I reached out across the stars, she said. I begged. I bargained. I broke every law of my empire to keep you alive. Cerise swallowed hard, her breath shivering. What? What did you do? Celira's gaze slid to Eric's still form, lying pale against the dark floor. I gave him the right to save you, she whispered. Cerise shook her head, confusion deepening. What does that mean? It means, the Queen said, her voice breaking at last, that when our blood failed you, his sustained you. He gave what I could. Not. The truth struck like a thunderbolt, rippling through the room in stunned silence. Cerise stared at her mother, then at Eric, her lips parting as the meaning crashed over her. No. Her voice was a breath, then a sob. You don't mean. Celira closed her eyes, the shame and sorrow searing through her like fire. His DNA, she said softly. His strength, woven with yours. To heal you. To keep your heart beating when mine could not. Cerise pressed a trembling hand to her chest, feeling the faint thrum beneath her ribs, as if it were something foreign, something new. Her gaze flew to Eric, this man who had fought for her, bled for her, shielded her with his own body. He's part of me, she whispered, the words tasting strange and holy on her tongue. More than that, Celira said, her voice trembling like a cracked bell. By his law, his human vow, you were his to protect. And he kept that vow when the stars turned cold. Tears blurred Cerise's vision as she knelt beside Eric, clutching his hand against her heart. Her voice shook as she whispered, You never told me. All these years? His eyelids flickered, gray eyes struggling to find hers through the gin. Haze of pain. A faint smile ghosted across his lips. Didn't need to, he murmured, his voice little more than breath. Just needed you safe. Don't you dare die, she choked, pressing her forehead to his. Not now, not after everything. Behind them, the Queen's fury had melted into something raw and aching. She sank to her knees on the blood-slicked floor, her hand hovering. Over Eric's shoulder, this human who had stolen her peace, shattered her pride. And yet given her back her soul dot for the first time, her voice broke on a single word. Stay, she whispered. Stay, and I will give you anything. Power, worlds, my empire, anything. Eric's smile deepened faintly, even as his breath grew shallow. Don't want your throne, he rasped. His gaze found Cerise again, and for a heartbeat, the storm faded from his eyes, leaving only light. Just her. The Queen closed her eyes, and in that silence, something within her shattered and remade itself. She reached down, pressing her palm to Eric's wound, summoning the full force of her power, not as a weapon, but as life itself. Energy flared, searing blue light engulfing. His body as the chamber shook with the weight of her will. When the glow faded, Eric's breath came deeper. Color seeped back into his face. He lived. Barely, but he lived. Cerise clung to him, sobbing in relief, while Celira turned her gaze to the towering windows, her voice a vow carved into the bones of the galaxy. They wanted war, she whispered. Instead, they will witness something greater. For in that moment, in the ruins of blood and fire, a bond had been forged, not of conquest or fear, but of sacrifice. A human, an alien queen, and a daughter reborn between two worlds. And the stars, silent for centuries, seemed to tremble because everything had just changed. Asterisk the end.